G'day, welcome to Paper Pandemic, the toilet paper hoarding board game. My name is Paul Adams of Small Crown Productions, where we are dedicated to bringing you family entertainment, both live and online. Paper Pandemic was born out of the pandemic. During the whole lockdown process, I started developing this game as a response to not being able to put on theatre shows and go out there and shoot work at that time. And this really was born out of a way to just take a bit of a fun look at some of the silliness that came out of the pandemic and try and take back a little bit of a laugh in the midst of it all. This is basically just a bit of an explanation and a playthrough of sorts so that you can get a sense of what the game looks like, what to expect and how to play. So let's just jump straight into it. This first version of Paper Pandemic is a print-at-home board game. So what that means is that you will receive a PDF or a link to download a PDF that contains all of the game components. So you can print them off at home or at a local print shop and be able to play the game. The only thing that's not included, of course, are dice and other people to play with. So in the pack you will receive two halves of the board, the left side and the right side. You will see on that board that there is a storefront edge that runs around the whole board. On the left side of the board there is a cafe, and on the right hand side of the board is the booster store. Next you get a page that has all of the stores on it and a set of escalators to enter and exit the shopping centre. So each store has a black bar in the centre of it, and on either side of that are the entrances and exits to the stores. There is a singular entrance and a singular exit for every store, and you must use it as such. The other thing that you'll see is a small dice token with two numbers beside it. For instance, this one has 3 and 9. So these numbers relate to your shopping and placement phase, which we'll get to soon in the gameplay section. And each store also has a small person icon on it with a number beside it, and that represents the maximum number of people allowed in that store. So if there is 4 people already in this store, for instance, and you are a 5th person wanting to get in there, you have to wait until someone leaves. You get a page that contains the head of each player, and there are 3 versions of the player tokens. You can use the actual character's head, you can use the coloured square that relates to that character, or just a simple number. And if you have more than the 8 players, well then you can actually use these to extend the number of players that you have. So you can use the player heads, and then the additional players could use the coloured squares, for instance. You'll also find the player token for the security guard, and on this page is also the symptoms card. Next we have the player cards. These player cards become the home base for everything that you collect, and they have a little home for your toilet paper as you're collecting it, the toilet paper as you store it, patience token, and of course the booster cards. So these next pages are your toilet paper and your patience tokens. One full set of toilet paper is cut out per player, and a set is contained on one side of the page. So this page contains 2 full sets of toilet paper, which is the minimum that you need for 2 players. These are representative of toilet paper packs, and each pack contains a certain number of rolls. Toilet paper is used as currency in the game, and that toilet paper is measured in packs. So if you're using the toilet paper to trade for anything in the game, you use it in packs, irrespective of how many rolls there are. The rolls are counted at the end of the game only to determine the actual winner. These tokens are the patience tokens. Now these are something that you can collect from the cafe, and they act as a plus or minus to your rolls to help you move faster or to help you collect toilet paper packs throughout the game. And the final thing that you will find in your pack are the booster cards. There are 2 types of booster card, a carry booster card and a bonus booster card. The carry booster cards allow you to increase your carry capacity. Every player starts with a default carry capacity of 2, and a bag, a basket or a cart allows you to increase that carry capacity, meaning you can carry more toilet paper at one time and get more toilet paper back to your car faster. The bonus booster cards give you a different kind of bonus. A lot of them give you plus or minus to a roll in one of the phases of the game. The sanitizer card, for instance, allows you to ignore the social distancing rule in stores, and something like the supply chain allows you to put toilet paper in any store during the placement phase. But all of these booster cards come at a cost, and that cost is toilet paper. So you trade packs of toilet paper for a booster card. Each card has a minimum number of packs of toilet paper that must be used, with the difference being allowed to be made up by patience tokens. So for instance, a bag has a cost of 2 toilet paper. You will note there's no minimum on this. It means it must be 2 toilet paper. But the cart has a cost of 4 with a minimum toilet paper of 2. So that means you have to use at least 2 packs of toilet paper, and the difference can be made up by patience tokens. So that's everything that you get in the game. We're going to assume that you've now printed all of that and cut it all out, and we're going to move into the setup of the actual gameplay. So the first part to set up is to place out the board. So the two halves of the board go together. It's recommended, of course, that you might tape them together on the underside so that they don't move around, like you will see happens in this video, because I didn't do that when I recorded this video. But basically the two halves of the board come together and the diamonds should meet up, and there is a yellow diamond in the center, which is actually where the security guard starts out should you be playing with him. In turn, each player places a store around the edge of the board. There must be a store placed on every edge of the board, and then the escalators are placed last. So you might end up with a board that looks something like this, or this, or this, which is the board that we'll be playing with today. Once you've set up the board and you have the stores in place and the escalators are in place, you need to put your patience tokens into play. So you can put them in a pile on the side of the board so that everyone can access them. But we actually found when we're doing some play testing, it's easier actually to just store them in the cafe, depending on how many number of people are playing. Put your player tokens on the escalator, make sure everybody has their player card available. You'll also place the boosters out, so there are some rules around how many boosters get to put in play. Again, you just need to put them where everyone can see them and access them. Put the symptoms card to the side of the board, ready for when that has to come into play. And then finally, you will put your toilet paper into the game. Now, the toilet paper just goes in a separate pile, but the important thing about the toilet paper is that it starts face down. So mix up those toilet paper packs so that they are all jumbled up, because they are randomly selected to be put into the game. And this just adds another layer of uncertainty and unpredictability about the game. And the final piece of setup is to actually start with some toilet paper packs in the game. So each player will in turn roll the dice twice, and the total number of those dice will determine where the toilet paper starts within the game. During the placement phase, a 7 is re-rolled, because you'll note that there is no 7 on any of the stores. So with all of the setup done, let's get into some gameplay. Gameplay is done in 3 phases. There is a movement phase, a shopping phase, and a placement phase. You may or may not use all of those phases during your turn, depending on the situation that you are in at the time, but the 2 dice are rolled for each of those phases if you choose to use them. The youngest player will always start first, and they will roll the dice for their movement phase. So player 1 rolls the dice and gets a 9. Because the escalator is very close to the cafe, they're going to move straight into the cafe. So once they're in the cafe, their movement roll is over and they move into the shopping phase. In the shopping phase in the cafe, you just take 2 patience tokens, and there ends their shopping phase. They move into the placement phase. So you'll roll the 2 dice, and that total becomes the location of that toilet paper pack. Player rolls a 7, so that is re-rolled because there are no 7s on the stores. However, there is an additional option for you to play a version where if you roll a 7 during the placement phase, the player gets to decide which store they would like to place that toilet paper in. So it gives you a little bit more freedom, a little bit more strategy that you can play if you want to play that way. But for the purposes of this playthrough, we're re-rolling our 7s in the placement phase. So player 1 re-rolls, gets a double 1, which totals 2, their toilet paper into the store that has the 2. You only do this once in your turn during gameplay. That's their turn over, and we move on to player 2. Player 2 rolls, and they get a double 1. So they've actually rolled a double during their movement phase. And this is where the symptoms card comes into play. If you roll a double during your movement phase, you earn yourself the symptoms card. And this symptoms card stops you being able to enter a store. Does not stop you entering the cafe, but it does stop you entering every other store, booster store included. Now you can remove the symptoms card by paying a pack of toilet paper or 2 patience tokens, either one of those. So at this stage, we don't have any patience tokens, so we're stuck with the card until we can either get someone else to roll a double and take the card from us, or we get some patience tokens and we can get rid of it. So now we move into the shopping phase. Well, we can't actually shop because we're not in the cafe, we're not in a store. So essentially we skip our shopping phase and move straight to the placement phase. So we roll the dice, we roll a 7, so we re-roll because that's the version we're playing. Then we roll a 10, and then that means our toilet paper pack goes into the store that has the 10 on it. So that brings us back to player 1. Having their movement roll. Now player 1 has decided to forego their movement roll, stay in the cafe, which you can do, and move straight into the shopping phase. So for their shopping phase, because they're in the cafe, they take an additional 2 patience tokens, and then they move into their placement phase. So we go back to player 2, who makes their movement roll, and uses that opportunity to go into the cafe, take some patience tokens for themselves. We still have the symptoms card. We roll our placement phase, place the toilet paper, and the play goes back to player 1. Player 1 rolls a dice, manages to roll a number large enough to get them into a store. They're ending their movement roll, moving them into the shopping phase. They roll a 5, but they need a 3 or a 9. But player 1 stacked up on patience tokens. So player 1 can take 2 of those patience tokens and use that to bring that 5 down to the 3. They go back into the reserve pile and they get to take a pack of toilet paper. And so it goes on the left-hand side of their player card, which is where we're carrying the toilet paper by hand at the moment until we can get some boosters. Rolls their second shopping roll. Now, it is player 2's movement phase. They decide to stay in the cafe, take the additional 2 patience tokens as their shopping phase, but then instantly use those to get rid of the symptoms card because we know that we are close enough to a store should we roll high enough to get into one. So we don't want to be blocked next turn, so we get rid of that and then they roll for their placement for this round. And that ends their turn and it moves back to player 1. Player 1 leaves the exit of the store that they're in, which is actually an advantage in this situation because the 7 that they've rolled gets them directly into the booster store. So now, having 2 packs of toilet paper in their arms, they can use those to buy a booster. The basket, which is what player 1 is going for here, costs 3 toilet paper, but it's a minimum of 2 toilet paper packs, and the difference again can be made up by patience tokens. So they're able to swap that out, get the basket, increasing their carry capacity. Now, in order to unload your toilet paper, you must get your character back to the escalators and you must leave through the exit as indicated by the arrow to go off the board onto the escalators. And the minute your character hits the escalators, you are assumed to have stored your toilet paper safely in your car, in which case you will then move it from the left side of your card to the right side of your card so you know it is safely stored. Once it is there, it no longer enters gameplay again, and you hold that to be counted at the end of the game, where the number of rolls are counted, not the number of packs. Now, the security guard is an additional option that you can play. If you choose to play the security guard, when you're placing your player tokens out at the start of the game, place the security guard in the yellow diamond in the center of the board. The security guard will stay there until someone decides to move them. If a player rolls a 7 during their movement phase, they can choose to move the security guard instead of themselves. But the security guard does not move across the floor tiles. You have the option to put the security guard into any store you choose. That locks the store down and means that nobody can purchase toilet paper from that store while the security guard is in that store. So you either need to move on to a new store or roll a 7 and sacrifice your movement during that phase to actually move the security guard. You can choose to move the security guard after you roll, which means if you're in a store, you can choose to roll your movement, and if you roll a 7, you can move the security guard out. However, if you don't roll a 7, you have to move your token out of the store. So there is a bit of a risk. So the security guard adds another whole level of strategy to the game that you can play, and it really just mixes up people's gameplay. So let's skip to the end now. Let's assume that gameplay has continued. We've played out all of the toilet paper. There's no more toilet paper to be bought. You've got it all on your player cards, either stored safely in your car or in your possession. You're not going to do any more trading. You're not going to buy any more booster cards, so you're not going to spend any more. So now it's actually time where you can assume that that's all safely stored, and we're going to actually count out to see who won. So we can see that we can start to lay out this toilet paper here. On the right hand side, player 2 only ended up with 5 toilet paper packs in the midst of the whole game, getting an 8-pack, a 2, a 12, a 12 and a 4, giving them a total of 38 packs. But even just with what's laid out there already, player 1 has 40 toilet rolls in amongst their 6 packs there, plus whatever's in those 3 packs still in their hand up the top, which will be counted as part of that. So player 1 in this instance wins by a bit of a landslide. Poor old player 2 had a bit of a, I suspect, a bad roll game. Now, should the number at the end be the same? Should they both end up with the same number of rolls? So let's assume that player 1 and player 2 both end up with 40 rolls amongst their toilet paper packs. Well, then the winner would be determined by who has the most number of patience tokens still in their hand. So in this case, it would be player 2 who has 3 patience tokens still in their hand, player 1 only having 1. So that is only if the total number of toilet rolls are a tie at the end of the game between 2 players. Should the number of patience tokens also be a tie, well, then the game's just called a tie and 2 people walk away with the victory knowing that they are the greatest pandemic shoppers around. So that's it, that's Paper Pandemic. It's a bit of a race game. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of silly fun. We've had a lot of fun playing it. Really excited that you're here checking out this Kickstarter page. So of course, I want to encourage you to purchase a copy of the game, of course. That purchase that you make will include all of the updates to the print-at-home version, but the popularity of this game will also determine whether or not I pursue production of it as a fully fledged produced game down the track as well. If enough people like it, then I'm definitely open to doing that. So if that is something that you think you would really enjoy, please pop a comment in the campaign feedback. Wherever you can leave a comment, please do, and let us know that that's something that you would be interested in, and we'll definitely work towards making that happen if there's enough popularity there for it. So thanks very much. I hope you enjoy the game, and I'll see you on the next one.